Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you guys for being here. Today, in my background, I have a snowboard, which I'm also going to paint. I know last time I had a bunch of paintings in the background. I like to paint a bunch of random things, and the next thing that's sort of on my list is to paint snowboard. So if you guys want a snowboard, if you're interested in snowboards, let me know. I think probably at some point I'll start commissioning them and selling them. Maybe I'll do a giveaway. So who knows? It's a pretty small audience, so the chances of you winning it are probably pretty high. So let me know if you're interested. But regardless, I'm happy to have you guys back today. Today we're going to be talking about really just holding your value, and I'm probably going to title this video something super like catchy and trendy, like things of value don't audition. Because first of all, that's been a super big topic really the past year or so, maybe like a couple of years. It's just like, which I think is really good, by the way, teaching you guys how to, hold your self-worth, like know your value. I think probably the 80s onward, a lot of the Western mainstream societal sort of program was really externally focused. It was, hyper consumption, all of these things. And I think the 80s were great for a lot of reasons, and I also think they were not great for a lot of other reasons. It's like every era, it's like every generation, right? But I think one of the things that we are sort of learning right now and kind of learning to integrate and sort of heal past, like generational trauma, if you will, is sort of healing past that externally focused mindset, right? People are learning how to actually hold boundaries, how to not excessively people please, how to know their own self-worth in a way that's healthy and not a way that's like narcissistic. Because I think, narcissism, and I use all of these terms very carefully because I think there's like scientific definitions, and then there's sort of like the meaning kind of that they kind of pick up, that people kind of put into. I think it's a very sort of nuanced topic, but I will say, like, I guess narcissism or like insecurity it's rooted in insecurity, and it's rooted in feeling a lack of worthiness or a lack of control. And so there's this need to excessively control or manipulate, right? And so I used to talk about this. I remember maybe like 5 years ago, I used to tell my partner, I was like, I advocate for healthy selfishness. And he was like, I don't understand what that means. Like selfishness is never a good thing. And I was like, but you see, like, if you're not selfish enough, like these unhealthy mechanisms develop, you know what I mean? Where either you are, I don't want to say subservient, but like in some way, easily manipulated by others, or looking for, love, respect, validation, worthiness in all the wrong places. And, or you go way to the other side and you have to overcompensate for this lack of worthiness that you feel because you weren't selfish enough to actually care for yourself in the way that you needed. You know what I mean? And so I think, so it's been really good, like these past 2 or 3 years, to actually see that people are talking about healthy degrees of selfishness, because, I think existentially, in my opinion, there's no difference between self and other. I think it's the same thing. Even if we talk about science and biology, like your vessel cannot distinguish hate between oneself and another. Same with love. Like it's literally one and the same. And that's not even to go into like the more metaphysical side of things, which is that we do all stem from the same consciousness. Like we're all animated by the same energy, the same awareness, right? But all that being said, that I think, you need to sort of protect yourself and care for yourself in the way that you would care for another, and vice versa. You need to care for others in the same way that you would care for yourself. And I think there's sort of lessons in both sides of those. And I think there's, like, all of us are sort of at different ends of the spectrum. Some people, maybe are a little bit more selfish and need to sort of integrate, caring for others, and then vice versa. Some people, are very, very giving, like overly giving, and need to learn how to be a little bit selfish and actually protect and care for themselves. So there's that balance, right? But I think, and I don't know the statistics, I just know that based on sort of what's been trending and sort of what people have been talking about the past couple of years, my guess is that a lot of people are sort of on this side of the spectrum where they haven't learned to care for themselves. And that's why a lot of, these topics, like people talking about these things, have become so popular, is because it's never really been spoken about before. And it's a big need, I think. And I think people are getting a lot of value from it. And I know myself included, you know what I mean? I think there's so much I've gained from hearing others sort of speak about this thing. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of elaborate on that further. And it's funny because all of these topics sort of tie into each other. And the reason I think I like this one so much is because it kind of is all encompassing. Especially, I talk a lot about like manifestation and energetics and stuff, but really everything comes back down to self-concept. Is like how you perceive yourself, how you view yourself in the world, what you believe you can accomplish. That's really the pillar of everything. Everything else kind of stems outward from that. And so that's why I think like having this really strong foundation of like who you are and like the value you hold is kind of the first step within anything. And even a lot of like my favorite manifestation, like energetic coaches, teachers will talk about that. Like before you do any of the, trying to manifest specific outcomes, specific things, like you've got to fix this. You've got to fix your worthiness. You've got to fix your self-belief. You have to fix your core self-concept at a really, really base level, which is just understanding how much value you actually hold and how much you're actually worth. And if you aren't familiar with identity work, I guess that's kind of a whole separate topic, but it just blows my mind how big that is. And I think it's being talked about more, but how much it can be overlooked. You know what I mean? Because we still do have a lot of these roots of like, oh, I want this, oh, I want that, I want that job, I want this person, I want XYZ, I want this appearance, I want this physique. It's all external so that we can change how we feel internal. But like if we talk about manifestation and energetic psychology, so many different things, it goes from the inside outward, And I think there's different aspects that play into this too, but I think even a lot of generational, not only generational trauma, but also generational advantages, I think come from this because we learn a lot of our self-concepts from our parents, right? And part of this is biological too. Like it all sort of, it plays into it. There's a lot of different levels to it. But in some sense, like we do pick up our beliefs about ourselves, our life from our parents, from our upbringing. We're in the first 7 or 8 years of our life, we're in theta, and then I think we go into alpha after that. But if you talk about brainwave states, those are basically the sponge states. And that's why kids are so sensitive. They don't have that conscious mind to sort of filter through things with logic. They just like take it in and sort of accept things. You know what I mean? So depending on what you kind of went through in the first, 7, 8 years of your life, that could have heavily influence kind of wherever you're at now, however old you are. You could still be carrying a lot of those subconscious beliefs because if you don't go in and like rewrite that program, a lot of times they just run on autopilot. Like you aren't even aware that it's happening if you aren't actively doing this work regularly. And it might be confusing because a lot of times we'll repeat certain patterns or certain outcomes within our life. And it's like, why does this thing keep happening to me? Why can't I get past this block? Like it's all subconscious. It's all internal. And unless you're like going in there and rewriting those programs, rewriting those codes, your life is just never going to change, And that sounds really discouraging, but I think the biggest thing is that it is possible. You just have to learn how to do the work, and it is that self-concept work, the rewriting the subconscious. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do this, and I'm always learning more about the actual, because I'm very interested in like the science of things. Like the two things I believe in most are like practicing all these different methods and all these different tactics, and directly understanding what works for me and what I get results from, but then also the science of it. Like what are the statistics, like people like Dr. Joe Dispenza who actually study, these different like woo-woo processes, like manifestational processes, energetic processes, and understand the science that goes into it and why these things work, and then, measure the differences when they make slight tweaks. So I'm very interested in both of those things, but all that to say, like there's a ton of different tools that you can use to rewrite your subconscious. And I think this can be done at a conscious level, like in your waking state, which would mean like you're in beta. So you're in your waking state, like beta, like low or high beta is like what you use in your day to day, when you're walking around, when you're shopping, usually when you're working. And then when you go into more like passive states, like watching TV, for example, then a lot of times you'll drop into like theta. Theta and alpha are more of, again, the absorption states, and then beta is more of like, you're more physically present, you're usually more externally focused. And then like theta, alpha, you're usually more internally focused. So when you're in those states, you know, all like circling back to kind of the childhood thing, those are the sponge states. So the best time to access those states are when you're waking up and when you're going to sleep, which I'm sure none of this is new to you, but it's just so important. And I think it's really easy to forget if you're not regularly consuming content and studying the laws and studying the science of this stuff. It's so easy to forget. And then you just do run on autopilot and you become sort of this person that you've been your entire life. So it's a constant adjustment of like coming back to yourself and being like, how do I perceive myself? What are my limiting beliefs? How is my life reflecting in the way I want it to? And if it's not, then what has to change? Because if you can change your internal state, your external state changes almost immediately. And sometimes there's a little bit of lag. It'll take time for specific things to, you know, transpire, but for the most part, it's immediate. So I think it's just so important it's not something that's one and done. It's something we continually come back to, because we can revert back to, even if, you know, you've done this healing work for a while, sometimes you have to heal through things or come back to certain reminders and bring yourself back into the state of being, you know, of the person that you want to be, of a person who is of a high caliber, who has value, who's confident, who feels successful, who feels wealthy, who's healthy, who takes care of themselves, whatever it is. You know, whatever that thing is in your life that you feel like isn't quite up to speed, isn't quite up to par, and it might be a number of things. You know, what is it in your belief about yourself that could be holding you back? And sometimes the answer is immediate. Like for some of you, I'm going to say that and you're going to know exactly what it was. It's just going to come to you. And other times it might take a little bit of time to sit with it. Go into the woods, journal, and just get it all on paper. You know what I mean? Start writing about this topic, start writing about your fears, your desires around the subject, start writing about your beliefs about it, your past, your history, and I promise you, probably a lot quicker than you think, some insights are gonna come up. Another great thing is meditation. Sit and try to, this is my favorite tactic personally, and I'll make a whole separate video on like the tools that have had the most massive impact in my life, and we can even go into the science of them. If you're interested, let me know. But I think one of the biggest tools I continually come back to, not only for manifestation, but also for just general well-being and like creating a good life and like mental health in general, even if you're not super into like the woo-woo manifestation thing. This has helped me so much heal through things and become aware of things, and it's visualization. And it almost is more valuable to do it not with the intention of trying to create something physically, but more so just playing with the energetics, sculpting them. Because what happens is when you visualize yourself, for example, say you're not sitting where you want to be financially or like within your career. If you go into a visualization, put on some binaural beats like alpha, theta, find something that feels good to you, but that helps me a lot. One of the ones that I come back to repeatedly is the Jose Silva theta beats. Best visualizations when I use that. Like, yeah, like I'm transported. So I can link it maybe, but yeah, give that a shot. Let me know if it works for you, but find whatever feels good. Find whatever feels comfortable. I meditate in a closet, specifically when I'm visualizing. And then a lot of times I'll do like a sleep eye mask too. And I don't know if anyone else does this, but this is the only thing that's worked for me in terms of visualization. Because I have a sleep mask and because I'm in a totally dark closet, my eyes stay open when I visualize. And I don't know if that's like normal. I have no idea. And then they'll flicker, and I think eventually they'll close, but like I start off my visualization with my eyes open, but I can't see anything. It's totally dark. So I'm just like projecting the image from my mind like onto, you know, like my fan around my visible reality. And that's worked wonders for me. But anywho, so if you're not sitting where you want to be in your career or finances, you know, I think one of the most helpful things to do is try to visualize yourself in the state that you'd want to be. Like, get really clear about that. You can journal about it too. And then try to embody that. Try to step into that state. When you go into theta and alpha, your conscious mind is going to be a lot softened. So when that happens, like that normal chatter you sort of get when you try to believe yourself into that state, all those limiting beliefs that come up, like, no, you can't do it because you've never been able to do it, XYZ, those are a lot quieter when you're in those brainwave states, which is why visualization during those times is even more so important. It's like the gateway between the conscious and the subconscious mind. But if there are still those limiting beliefs, when you're in meditation in that state, those limiting beliefs are going to become clear to you. They're going to come up. They're going to come up in your meditations, and then it's going to be clear what you have to work through. And then if you repeatedly come back to those meditations, if you repeatedly keep practicing the state, eventually it's going to feel natural to you, and you're going to keep it doesn't even have to be a conscious thing. It's totally subconscious. The more you keep embodying that state, energetically, you're going to work through those limiting beliefs because it's going to feel more and more natural for you to be successful, for you to feel wealthy, whatever it is that you're trying to embody, whatever it is that you're trying to create. Subconsciously, those beliefs are going to start falling away because you're literally creating a new character, you're creating a new identity, a new self-belief. So those limiting beliefs are not congruent with the frequency that you've been practicing in your nervous system. So it's not, I think journaling about it is helpful, and maybe it does help to understand in your childhood, like what specifically maybe led to certain beliefs, but I don't think it's entirely necessary. I think like a lot of it is just energetic, and the more that you can keep practicing that state and sort of teaching your body what that feels like, I think naturally, that gap starts to close, and we continue kind of working through whatever it is that we need to work through to, really believe in ourselves and take ourselves to the next level. So the title of this video was supposed to be something like I stated earlier, like things of worthiness don't audition, but this all plays into it, which is that if you are truly aligned with something, you aren't desperate for it, you aren't begging for it, you aren't auditioning for it. And I think we've been talking a lot about, like, it's all energetics is the thing. We talk so much about chasing, relationship dynamics, who holds the power, how to have worthiness, boundaries, but it's all energetic, all of it, like it all comes back to self-concept and worthiness. And like you can take, like, for example, you could take the same person, give them two different upbringings and put them in the same situation. Okay. So say they both had different upbringings. Now they're both, 30, make 40K a year, live in an apartment, I don't know, just same life circumstances, you know what I mean, but totally different upbringings. One, lived a very wealthy, affluent lifestyle, maybe had, a lot of like wealthy people around them. Like wealth was very common, it was very normal, it was very expected, it was easy. And then the other one did not, like grew up where money was very hard to come by. It didn't grow on trees, like it was not abundant, it was challenging to make and to hold wealth. Like those people, even if they're put in the same exact circumstances, are going to have completely different outcomes. And some of it, I'm sure you can attribute to like different connections, opportunities, but in my opinion, a lot of it is just that belief that yes, opportunity is out there. Yes, I'm worthy. Yes, it is easy to come by, and yes, I can do it. And if you can just learn how to embody the state of that person, of someone who believes themselves to be worthy and believes the opportunity is out there, things start showing up. And you don't have to take my word for it. Please don't, actually. There's a lot of people out there whose words you can take for it, but I would say just practice it. Just do it. And the irony is that you have to believe in it. You have to believe in the new self-concept in order for it to work. But if you do, it does. It absolutely does. And I just want that more than anything for you, because it has totally 180'd my life and so many other people's lives. So I would say if I were to give you one conclusion in this video, it's that you are what you believe yourself to be, and you can change that. And that change comes, in my experience, through all of my practicing, right when you wake up or right when you go to sleep. Shut yourself in a dark closet, wear an eye mask, put on beats, and just visualize. And visualize yourself into the person you want to be, into the state you want to be, and do it for 30 days, just 30 days. And then come back to me and tell me how much your life has shifted. I hope this helps. I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.